BYUSN. It is game day on a Friday, and frankly, we're hoping that we have the second best performance in this stadium today.
Cosmo? And it doesn't matter how BYU wins if it wins, right? Right?
Welcome to BYU Sports Nation, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere on a brisk, late October Friday morning,
Crispy.
28th. I am Spencer Linton alongside a bundled up Jarom Jordan.
What's the weather right now? It's freezing, man.
I think 36 degrees.
I'm saying 36, yeah. So tonight, according to the weather app, 51 degrees. Okay, so not going to be that cold, but once the sun goes down, okay, in the fourth quarter, it's going to be low 40s. So it's going to be crispy, but great to be here. Second time in the stadium. By the way, I haven't seen the new desk here. This looks amazing for BYUSN Game Day, also BYU Sports Nation today. So, yeah, we're excited about today's show, including Roy Philpot of ESPN, who's calling the game. He's going to join the program. What sticks out? What kind of urgency does he sense from his conversations with BYU? Superstar soccer player Allie Fryer, hopefully going to join us in the game tomorrow. We're planning on having her here today, but she's getting ready for that game, not available. Big game with Santa Clara, Spence. And how did volleyball do without Whitney Bauer at setter? She's injured, has a knee injury, did not play. How did the Cougars do last night? We'll tell you.
All right.
And Lauren Gustin throws up a Barbara Walters.
Ooh.
You know what I mean by that?
I like that.
And why the Pac-12 is still crazy naive. But first, today's headlines.
Yes, center stage, BYU football at Lavelle Edwards Stadium hosting the Pirates of East Carolina. I predict at least one pirate costume in the stadium tonight. Maybe you should dress up as a pirate.
Why would a Cougar fan show up?
I'm saying the pirate fans will dress up as pirates. Halloween weekend.
They coming out for this?
They split the all-time series, these two teams. BYU winning back in 2015 and the Cougars losing in Greenville back in 2017, 33-17. Pre-game coverage starts at 6 Eastern, 4 Mountain on BYU TV. You can listen to full coverage on the BYU radio app as well. Huge game day for all of you right here from Lavelle Edwards Stadium.
Cougars in the NFL coming up this weekend. Big one for Zach Wilson and the injured Jets against the Pats. Tyler Algier and the Falcons have a big one in the NFC South against Brady Christensen and the Panthers. Fred Warner and the Niners play the struggling Rams. Dax Milne and the Commanders play the Colts, who are going to start Sam Ellinger at quarterback. Taysom Hill and the Saints host the Raiders. And roller skate aficionado Jamal Williams and the Lions take on the Dolphins.
Jarom, you just teased it, so let's talk about BYU women's volleyball. The 17th-ranked Cougars facing some tough odds. Injuries, they showed up in a big way last night. They sweep Gonzaga, led by Aaron Livingston's career night, 22 kills. BYU completes the season sweep against the Zags as well. They'll take on Portland on Saturday, 3 Eastern, 1 Mountain. You can watch that on BYU TV or the BYU TV app.
Big-time performance without Whitney Bauer, Abby Taylor, tremendous. 10 kills in the first set from Aaron Livingston. 10! Woo! Women's basketball defeated the Westminster Griffins 72-51, not to be confused with Westminster, in an exhibition game led by Lauren Gustin's 25 points and 24 rebounds. Whoa! In 2020 was
25 and 24?
Season opener November 8th at Colorado State. Originally it was going to be South Carolina. The Gamecocks got out of that.
Well, this is a week of huge games for every BYU team, it feels, including 13th-ranked BYU women's soccer when they host number 23 and longtime rival Santa Clara Saturday night at Southfield. Remember, the last time these teams met was in the NCAA College Cup, BYU winning in PKs. The history is long. They don't like each other. And once again, drama on the line. Both of these teams competing for a West Coast Conference championship tomorrow night. BYU has to win this game, Jarom, if they want to hoist the WCC trophy once again. 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain on BYU TV. Cannot wait for this match.
They love hoisting trophies. Number 2 men's and number 5 women's cross country compete in the West Coast Conference Championships today in Portland. Shout out to the 503 at Fernhill Park. I have no idea where that's at, despite growing up there. Shout out to everybody that's a final hurrah there in Portland. The men's team seeking an 8th straight title. The women a 5th. Get it done.
We featured BYU women's tennis yesterday with that duo going to nationals.
Yeah.
I want to shout out to the men's tennis team. 8 different players in Texas for the Rice Fall Challenge. Play began yesterday, will continue through tomorrow. This marks the final event of the fall season for the Cougar men. All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending. Desperation mode activated. BYU a 3-point home favorite, 56% chance to win, according to ESPN's Football Power Index when they take on East Carolina tonight.
Still surprised by that.
Yeah, it's projected to be a very close game. Jarom, does it even matter how BYU wins as long as they win tonight?
It does not matter, Spence. I do not care about the means. We cannot be that picky. Beggars aren't choosers in this case. BYU beggar it with 3 losses in a row with a talented 5-3 ECU team that very easily could be 6-1 had they sealed the deal against North Carolina State and Navy. Great comeback against Memphis. Certainly could have lost that one too. But this is a team that just worked by 21 UCF last week. Took the ball away 4 times. Took it to the 5-1 UCF Knights, who the week before had put up a 70 spot on Temple. I am intimidated by how good ECU's offense is in particular.
Understandably.
Given BYU, even if BYU's defense was good, BYU's defense isn't even okay right now. It's terrible. They need to play way better, obviously. And, you gave up 52 against Arkansas, who is right now kind of middle of the pack SEC team. What is an American team that's kind of in the upper echelon in ECU? What do they bring? It's a short week. They're traveling far. Traveling west, not as big a deal as traveling east in terms of the time, right? They're going back in time. Marty McFly showing up for ECU, like not a big deal. But it's this ECU offense and the ballers. I'll get to that later in game notes.
Okay.
In the program that intimidates me because they've got a quarterback, a running back, and 2 wide receivers that are top 10 in something in the country, and that makes me nervous because the BYU defense has been Swiss cheese the last couple of weeks. Let's talk about it. 40 points a game allowed the last 3 average.
Not great.
7.3 yards per play, 6 yards a carry, 9 yards per pass attempt. You want to be like sub-8 there,
6
right?
6 yards a carry is the one that concerns me the most.
That's a big one. Keaton Mitchell is legit. One BYU player told me yesterday he's the fastest running back we will have faced this season. So
faster than Oregon.
Faster than Oregon. And here's one that let's break down. 37 minutes of possession allowed to the opposing team. For that to go down, there's 2 things that need to happen. Obviously, BYU's defense has got to get off the field. But BYU's got to be able to run the rock. Stop playing from behind. Stop saying, hey, Jaron, carry us with your injured shoulder. I know Aaron Roderick said, hey, he's 100%. He can't be 100% the way he's played the last couple weeks, right? If he's a Hundy and he's delivering those performances, that's tough.
Yeah, the numbers tell the story. Since he took that hit against Utah State, he's been a different quarterback.
And he was good against Arkansas in spite of that. But Notre Dame, obviously different, didn't take hardly any reps that week. And so, yeah, you got to be able to run the ball. Chris Brooks is out. So Miles Davis and Lopini Katoa got to show up tonight and help BYU. At least, if you don't score, you got to get a couple first downs, chew up a few minutes, give the defense a rest, get back out there. And hopefully they get a couple of takeaways. BYU defense got to play better. The offense got to play better too. This isn't 100% on the defense. The offense has to play complementary football.
I don't care how BYU wins this game as long as they win. This is the scenario where you've been wandering in the wilderness for a while. You're starving, you're thirsty, and you come down from the foothills and you're like, the Golden Arches. Not high-quality food. But you know what?
How dare you? I love McDonald's.
You're going to run into McDonald's, and you're going to order the worst thing on the menu because it tastes so great.
I get McDonald's weekly.
Can you imagine? You're starving. BYU's starving for a win. And they've been wandering. You come down, and that's the only restaurant. Can you imagine, like, I'll hold out.
How are you dumping on America's number 1 restaurant?
I'll hold out for something better.
Wait, let me help this analogy because you've offended me with McDonald's. It's that post fast Sunday potluck in a student ward where it's terrible.
Everything tastes delicious.
But it tastes delicious. Let me give you another analogy. I'm on my Mijan trip in Brazil, and for some reason in southern Brazil they love cabbage, but it's dry. I craved cabbage suddenly when I was down there, and I had it. I was like, that was amazing. And then later I was like, what the heck? I don't like cabbage. That was so dry. That was crazy. Maybe later we'll think that about an ECU win if BYU wins 10-7. But right now, you are right. We are hungry.
Starving.
Day hungry.
Starving. It does not matter. The quality of food, the quality of win does not matter. A win is the most important thing.
Yeah, I would take.
You just need a meal. Who cares what's in front of you?
I would take 2-0. This is like the rare instance where I would take a safety to nothing
Take
win.
this random collection of mountain berries and wood chips that have some form of protein. Okay,
wood chips?
I'm starving.
Hopefully they're not buffalo chips.
It does not matter how BYU wins this game as long as they win. We always talk about, man, it stinks to learn through a loss, and it's way better to learn and get better through a win. BYU can play the ugliest football game ever tonight. I don't care if they give up 54. As long as they score 55, Awesome.
Bring Toledo 2016.
Do we care about
vibes.
that? No, we talk about Jamal Williams and his 5 touchdowns and his 286 rushing yards.
We don't talk about
we gave up
Kareem
53 points, though. Who cares? You won the game. That is what it's about. Like, desperation mode activated. Just win the game, whether it's 2-0, 7-6, 10-9, 55-54. I don't care. Win the game and feast on whatever is in front of you. It'll be better than eating nothing.
What if BYU needs to make a field goal tonight to win? Ed Lamb revealed on Monday on Coordinator's Corner that Jake Oldroyd is back as the starting place kicker.
He should be.
What if BYU needs a kick and this time it goes in?
Hero
that would
mode.
be nice.
Hero mode.
Yeah.
Redemption. I would love the redemption story involved there if that's what it came down
nice.
to and Jake made the kick.
Means don't matter. Means
just
don't.
win the
end game. We're in the end game now. We're in the end game now. All right. With that in mind, let's get to some game day guarantees.
Eat, people!
It's time for your BYU Sports Nation Game Day Guarantees. Guarantees. Yeah, right. To be wrong.
Hey.
Wait, is Mike still on?
I'm 50%. Come on, Ben. 12 for 24.
I can't talk crap on 50% because I'm worse than that. I'm sub 30. I'm like, what am I? I don't even know. 7 for 24.
7 for 24. That's right around 30%.
That's probably my 3-point percentage.
30%? Yeah, that's an okay 3-point percentage.
I'm probably lower.
All right, what are your game day guarantees, Jarom?
Number one, give me the over at 63.5. I think this is going to be a shootout.
Okay, so for those that aren't aware of the over, this is total points projected by our friends in the desert. Like the total
I'm not
points
friends
between
with them.
ECU and BYU combined. You think it's going to be 64 or more?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of points. I hope
okay.
many from Brigham.
Okay.
Number two, 600-plus combined pass yards between Holton Ahlers and Jaron Hall.
Strangely, that feels very safe.
Lot of pass yards going on tonight.
That feels safe.
Despite it being cold and maybe a little moist or whatever, yeah. Okay, number three. Here we go. I'm going to reverse curse myself, okay?
Ooh.
The people that don't like when I say 17-plus for BYU. I'm going the opposite. I'm going ECU 17-plus.
Yes.
In an attempt
to
reverse this and get BYU a dub. We're summoning
I love it. Let's go. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up and clap for that.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Let's give it up for 17-plus. Let's go. Hey,
reverse curse.
Let's go. Let's get this done.
Plus ECU.
Hey, I've always wanted to do Wolf Blitzer CNN thing where we stand up, and now you're seeing that I'm wearing sweats today. So there you go. There you go. Those are my three.
Nobody cares. It's freezing.
I know.
Totally
There's no usher going, where's your pass?
Totally understandable. All right. 17-plus reverse curse ECU. Number one, Jarom. ECU will have at least one series of 3-and-out tonight.
Of course they will.
At
least one? Yeah, of course.
I'm mailing it in because BYU's been so bad on third down defense. Come on. Please, if there's not one 3-and-out, we're in for a bit.
Need to be
long night.
3 or 5.
I'll take just third down stops in general. You don't have to go 3-and-out. I'm thinking like one 3-and-out. Just give me one 3-and-out.
I need to mail it in like that more. I was going to be like, everyone will be cold.
Okay?
At some point.
Number two. And these are like, again, mine are like pleas. Like I am pleading for these. 1 3-and-out. Number two, BYU.
Yours, please?
BYU will finally not be outscored in the second quarter. Second quarter has been a disaster for BYU this season.
These are Garen please.
Garen
please.
please.
Yeah.
I guarantee BYU will not be outscored in the second quarter.
Please, rush for 30 yards or something.
I do feel like it's the first team to 30 wins. I think it's going to be a shootout for sure. First team to score 30, you're going to win this game.
Well, if it's shootout, I mean, they're going to trade, so it's not guaranteed that the first to get that.
Well, because over 63.5, like they're thinking like a 33-30 game.
You think in the fourth someone reaches 30?
Yes.
Someone's getting to the 40s tonight.
Ooh, you think someone's going to go into the 40s?
Oh, yeah, take the over, baby.
Even with the cold weather?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to give you a note.
I hope it's BYU.
I'm going to give you a note later that would suggest that just maybe it's not East Carolina as the team that's getting to 40 on the road. Okay?
Shocking, biased BYU opinion.
I'm just saying. I'm
going
up trends. I'm just going up trends from when I've watched them play on
the road.
Never
claimed not to be homers. We're employed by Brigham Young.
Literally
paid by BYU.
Do we want BYU to win this game? Versus 30 wins. Those are the guarantees. Yeah, that was a circus.
We almost made it to the post, the end of the sun.
Holy
almost.
cow.
We were like 5 seconds short.
Our question of the day is this. Does it matter? Does it even matter how BYU plays? As long as they win this game tonight.
Can you see our... Yeah. I don't think you can.
It's freezing.
It's cold, man.
At Long Maple Bar
Is this like
Twitter.
like a BYU dining person?
I don't know.
They're like, enough with the chocolate.
At Long Maple Bar says, I'd prefer BYU plays like we all know BYU's capable of playing.
Yep.
But breaking a 3-game losing streak is more than enough for me.
Yeah. This isn't the game where we need BYU to play a certain way. That's Utah Tech.
Long
live on
Maple
BYU
Bar, listen, if the win is a crusty old Cougar tail that's more than a week old, but you're starving.
More than a week old?
You'll take it as long as it's a win. If you're starving, you will eat that.
I don't know about more than a week old. Which, by the way, that's cool that Twitter still works despite everyone being fired yesterday.
Yeah, thanks Elon for
Elon
letting us keep our accounts.
Elon Musk shows up and does what most of the fans wanted with the BYU defensive staff.
Gosh.
No, they're still employed.
Elon, thanks, buddy. Can we get that blue check mark already?
Why can't we get a blue check mark?
No.
We don't have a blue check mark.
The show's got a blue check mark.
I don't care.
BYU TV Sports has got a blue check mark.
Of course it should.
Can we get a blue check mark? Hashtag BYUSN on Twitter, Facebook, and
I don't want to name names, but marketing. Let's go. BYU Sports Nation Game Day has full pregame coverage tonight. Cougars and Pirates. Don't know if you heard. 6 Eastern tonight on BYU TV.
Yari.
You need that grill pumping some fire tonight.
Yes, please.
Cold.
Up next, man who's going to call the game for ESPN, Roy Philpot, joins us on set. Can we get him something warm? We need to get him something warm. What's his view on the state of BYU football? This is BYU Sports Nation.
I was 4 years old when I left Zambia.
My dad was born in Sheila, in the south of Italy.
My mom is from Slovakia. We haven't really talked about it, never, not once.
My dad doesn't really talk about his life in Serbia. I just really want to know who he is. And then discover who am I.
It is a game day, live from Lavelle Edwards Stadium.
Those were defensive highlights.
BYU Sports Nation continues. I know.
More of those.
That was purposeful.
More of those.
BYU needs more of those under the lights at Lavelle Edwards Stadium alongside Jarom Jordan. I am Spencer Linton. It's cold, but we're warm thinking about the potential of BYU snapping a 3-game losing streak in Provo.
Gotta do it.
The man who is going to call the game for ESPN tonight is Roy Philpott. He joins us he was kind enough to dress up and get warm and come hang out in the frigid air.
A little cold out here right now,
yes,
but it's
sir.
not too bad. Not as bad as I thought it would be.
Hey,
well, once that sun goes down tonight,
it's a little different. Yeah,
it'll be chilly.
We traveled in last night, and our sideline reporter Paul Carcateri was on my flight from Atlanta, and he looked at my suitcase. It's a tiny suitcase, and he said, "Hey, did you bring a big coat?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've called games here before, Paul, and I brought my big coat because up there in the booth it gets pretty frigid."
For sure.
I believe it's an open air booth, is it not?
It is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets a little chilly.
You're a man prepared.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think I know how you're gonna answer this next question, but what's been the best thing you've done in Provo since you got here this time around?
Well, we went to Bam Bam's barbecue last night, and I'm here to tell you the brisket is to die for. So yeah, we
So
really
good.
enjoyed that. It's the first time I've been there. Our analyst Andre Ware had been here a couple of times, been there a couple of times, Spencer, and he had been talking about it all week. I intentionally saved the appetite until late last night, and now I have brisket remorse because I probably had about 3 pounds. It was great. It was great. So that's been the highlight so far.
Fantastic.
We love Cam True. We know the owner. We love Bam Bam's,
Awesome.
which is awesome. And Andre's saying he loves it too is a big deal.
Yeah.
As a Houston guy.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's quite the compliment.
Yeah, look, I'm from South Carolina. I take a lot of pride in our barbecue.
I'm sure.
I lived in Dallas for a couple of years. I know what Texas barbecue is all about.
You know.
And it reminded me a lot of Texas barbecue. It's got that kind of smoky sensation to it. It was legit.
Now, what is also smoky is tonight's matchup.
Oh, my goodness.
Transition. Because BYU's defense has been terrible
Yeah.
the last 3 games. What kind of urgency do you sense from this team to try and get it right against a very talented ECU offense?
I think the message this week has been positive. It's what you want to hear because you realize what's at stake right now. And if you look at these final couple of games, tonight's game, I mean, you don't want to say it's a must-win to go to a bowl game before you go to the Big 12. But
Feels that way.
it's got to be. I mean, because you feel good about Utah Tech, and then you look at road trips coming up to Boise State and Stanford. Those are going to be tough. You win this game tonight, all of a sudden that becomes much more manageable. So in terms of postseason, I think the staff understands what's at stake tonight, and there's a better sense of urgency, but I think it's all about responding to adversity tonight. When adversity strikes, does this team play in a different way than what we saw last week against Liberty and maybe the last couple of games? Again, I'm hearing the right stuff. I just think, what does it look like tonight on the field?
Sure.
That's exactly
fair
how we
questions.
feel as well.
Yeah.
Like, what is it going to look like?
Maybe there's something to the home atmosphere and
Yeah.
night games. I mean, we have spent all week talking about how weird it is that BYU has been so markedly better at night,
Yeah.
especially at home.
Let's tell you that stat, by the
They
way.
have been
Maybe you
anywhere
know.
else, yeah.
If you don't know, since 2019, 6 p.m. or later local kick,
Yeah.
23-1.
Yeah, I think I've read that. Just one loss.
Just one loss to Utah in 2019, who was as high as 5 that year.
Okay.
They were amazing.
In addition, I think Coach Satake against teams from the Eastern time zone and night kicks out here is his record is pretty spectacular as well. So
Perfect, yeah.
it's perfect. So there's something to be said about that. I think it's critical from the BYU side tonight for the crowd to be in it. And again, when something goes wrong, the wheels don't come off in terms of the atmosphere. I see that a lot in college football. For teams that are struggling, they're playing a home game, there's big expectations, things go wrong, everybody kind of sits on their hands. That's not what you're trying to do this late in the
Sure.
season.
You're a Carolina guy. You know where Greenville is. You know where East Carolina's coming from.
I do, yeah. They have good barbecue there, too, by the way.
They do?
It's kind of that, it's a different flavor to it.
Hey, they're coming to 40 degrees in Provo and making the 2 time zone travel jump and having to play LaVell Stadium at night. How much do you put into that impacting what we think is a really good East Carolina team?
Yeah, it does. I think the travel, it impacts more than people talk about. I mean, when you come across the country, almost 2,000 miles, the temperature difference, a place you've never been before, there's that unfamiliarity, I guess, to it. I think all those things matter. And, from an ECU perspective is how do they handle that? How do they handle adversity for the first time? They've played well lately. I mean, they look really strong and comeback wins against Memphis and what they did last week against UCF.
Wow.
I mean, they smashed UCF. We had UCF earlier this year against Louisville, and Gus Malzahn's team, they can run it. They're physical. They've got athletes. They've got speed, all kinds of things, and ECU smashed them. So different environment tonight, and coming across the country is a big deal. As a broadcaster, I mean, sometimes you feel that with a bunch of trips out west from where I am in South Carolina. For a football team, for an athlete this late in the season, it can be a big deal. How do they handle it? So, I mean, yeah, dealing with adversity for both sides tonight. It sounds cliche, but it's a big deal.
BYU's offense has got to keep up with ECU's offense because they've got some ballers in Ehlers, Mitchell, Johnson, Winstead, and others.
Yeah.
All these guys are top 10 in something in the country. I'm wondering how that happens, given the way BYU's defense has played the last 3 weeks, giving up 40 a game, but that's going to be a challenge for BYU against those guys.
I think so. And, I mean, in particular, you talk about C.J. Johnson and his relationship with Holton Ehlers. It goes back to high school. Mm-hmm. There's a good continuity there that I think has really paid dividends for them. And he knows where to go with the football if things go awry on a particular play. And so that relationship has been special. But they've got weapons. I mean, our crew call this morning, we talked about a big 3, and really it's a big 4. You talked about Mitchell and Johnson, Winstead, and Ehlers, all those guys. Tons of experience that are going to pose a problem, and they have all year long. We've seen it in the AAC. We'll see it again tonight.
If BYU and East Carolina do get into a shootout, what do you make of Jaron Hall and Puka Nacua and the BYU offense, who have looked brilliant at moments.
Yeah.
And then at Liberty, from the second quarter on, just kind of a huge head scratcher. So where are you with the BYU offense if this goes to a shootout?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because BYU is without its leading rusher tonight, is without its leading receiver tonight, as we all know. And so for Puka Nacua, I'm looking, he's got to touch the football 15 times. And I don't think they want to line him up as a running back, 5 or 6 times, but to guarantee touches, you're going to have to do that some. So can he create some plays there? What does that look like? In the screen game, getting him the ball, he's got to touch it a bunch. And I told our crew this morning, I was like, we need to have a counter on how many times he touches.
Yes.
We need to have the telestration ready to go if he lines up in the backfield or where he is, because it's a big part of the offense. And then for Jaron Hall, I think he's healthier now. I think that makes a big difference. He's practiced all week. He's getting all the reps and the snaps that he needs. That didn't really happen against Notre Dame a few weeks back when things started to turn south. That matters. I don't know what happened the second half against Liberty. It's just like I watched him like this doesn't look like what I expect.
Yeah.
Weird game.
It was strange.
Yes.
Yeah, it really was.
Because he's on NFL boards, but certainly Notre Dame and Liberty haven't helped in that regard. He was lauded a potential first-round guy earlier in the season, perhaps off of that right now, but he has a few games to get back in it. Back to Puka, by the way. Once every 6 touches, he's scoring. It's just crazy. And I love, hey, get him the ball, but I also think, it's a little sign of desperation when you throw him in the backfield like, this is what we have to do to get this done. But BYU's this is the same team that beat Baylor here early in the year. Now, Baylor's struggled a little bit. Still a good team. Still a good team. But it's also a team that got worked by Liberty. So we watch BYU every week. We don't even know what BYU we're going to get here tonight. I don't know if BYU knows what BYU they're going to get here tonight.
No, I don't. And I don't think that they know. And I think with Coach Sataki, he's looking at the team, trying to press the right buttons, taking over defensive play calling and trying to massage that a little bit into a better direction. I will say this, listening to Puka talk this week, I love his demeanor. We talked to Jaron Hall, and I liked his demeanor too and what he said to us. But with Puka, there's an energy about him that I would like to see kind of permeate throughout the rest of the team. I think that potential is there. I think they're going to start fast tonight. Again, the question is, how do you handle adversity? And it may be up to Puka, Jaron, to just kind of lift these guys up when they need it. But, Puka, he gets done with the press conference. Adios, go Cougs. I just love his vibe and kind of what he's doing. They need more of that from this team right now.
Yeah, and I'm glad you keep bringing up adversity because it is struck in a major way, primarily in the second quarter. The second quarter has been an absolute disaster for BYU this season. I want to say they're minus 80 in the second quarter after the Liberty
I don't think
game.
it's that high, but it's high.
I mean,
I'll look it up right now.
It's so bad.
The starts have been good. I mean, against Liberty, the start was great.
Yes.
That's exactly what you
Start
wanted.
against Arkansas was good.
Absolutely.
Second quarter, the wheels kind of fall off against the Razorbacks and against the Flames. And
minus 58.
Minus 58. Thank you. Yep. Okay, so minus 58 in the second quarter alone.
Plus 52 in the first.
I mean, how do you address something like that?
So, to me, when I hear that, I look at the game plan going in, and, they're going to look at scripting some plays and certain sequences with A-Rod and with Jaron and trying to get things going. That script, everything looks good because they're starting the way they need to. Other teams are making adjustments. Okay, what do we do to adjust better? When you look back and self-scout yourself, and we talk with coaches about this across the country every single week, what are we doing where we've got to get better, where we've got to improve? And so I think tonight, again, that's under the spotlight. Look, East Carolina's probably going to put up some points. It's going to be imperative for Puka to get going, Jaron to get going. However that happens, what's the cheat code where you find a way to generate yards on third down, on third and medium, on third down and short, and just keep the drive going? Like, it may be that simple if this game gets into a shootout and things start, going north of 30 points at some point.
And I think it will. The total is 63.5. I'm taking the over on that. I think it's going to be a shootout. And when you look at the last 3 games, BYU's allowed the other team an average of 37 minutes of possession. The defense isn't getting off the field. BYU's not able to run the ball. I think if BYU can't run the ball tonight, it's going to be tough. You can't just say, hey, Jaron, go win it. That's what they've tried to do against a couple of teams and didn't work last few weeks.
That sounds cliche. You say we got to run the ball, we got to stop the run.
It's as simple as that.
For BYU tonight, I mean, I haven't mentioned it yet, but going back to our coaches' meetings, it feels like that's imperative. And where can you generate those rush yards? Where can you find a way on third down and whatever to sneak and keep the drive going? And that's going to be critical for ECU. Same thing. I mean, these teams, they want to do some wide zone action. They want to get their backs going. ECU is without its top back, and Harris, who's been injured the last couple weeks, he's out for the year. But they've got Keaton Mitchell, who we've talked about a little bit. That's
Harris
explosive.
is a better back than Mitchell. Jeez. Mitchell's an 1,100-yard guy.
Yeah. Harris is from my neck of my territory in South Carolina. He went to Burns High School, a powerhouse nationally, and yeah, he's pretty explosive. But he's on the shelf.
One BYU player told me yesterday that Mitchell is the fastest running back they've seen all year. That includes Oregon.
Okay.
That's something.
He is quick.
Yeah.
Roy Philpot of ESPN is with us on BYU Sports Nation. He'll call the game tonight, 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain on ESPN2. I've put a lot of stock into BYU's defense being better in week 2 with Kalani calling the plays. I feel like when you're making a wholesale change, I feel like I should have seen it coming when they go into Liberty and they're trying to do all this different stuff and it just got weird. But I feel like week 2, now that he's had 2 weeks in charge of the defense, that they will be better tonight. What's the sense you get from Kalani in that regard?
I definitely agree, and that was one of the questions I asked him this week is just tactically how different was it last week? And you could tell, it's different. Getting guys lined up and making sure everybody is ready to go. It was a major adjustment. I think it's one he's comfortable with. I think it's one that in week 2, he'll make those adjustments and be better with it. We talked about tackling school and kind of what has changed there in that department. One thing he said to me that really sticks with me right now is, guys got to stop leaving their feet. We're doing that too much. We did go back to the fundamentals and the basics again this week. So we talked about third down and medium, just keeping drives going. It may be that simple. Running the football, it may be that simple. When Mitchell gets the edge tonight, when Ehlers is trying to do something on the ground perhaps, can they just simply make that play that's there? There were plays to be made against Liberty last week, and they just weren't made, especially out there near the perimeter. So, again, that's some hidden yardage, something to think about tonight.
All right, we've got a little bit of BYU Sports Nation swag for you.
A little swag? Yeah, we got BYU Sports Nation on the back there. This is a very warm, second layer.
Yes.
I think is what we're talking about.
I can't wear it tonight, right? Obviously.
Wait, what?
I can't wear it tonight, but I will be wearing this back in the shower. It gets cold back in the deep south.
Yeah. And you're a Clemson guy, and I do need to point out one of our good friends, Tyson Hutchins. He put together so many of those magical videos you see with Dabo Sweeney and the Clemson. He was with Athletic Marketing. He was out in Clemson.
Yeah.
And now he's back in Provo.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we've got that Clemson flavor.
We've got a Clemson flavor back here doing athletic marketing videos for us at BYU again.
There's, really nobody better in the country with what they started maybe 10 years ago, and then now you see it everywhere. But, he's good people then for sure.
Fantastic stuff. Roy, thanks for hanging out with us,
appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation, and good luck the rest of the way.
Check it out on The Deuce tonight. I don't think they call it that anymore, but I missed it.
We can do whatever we want on this program.
On The Deuce.
We can do what we want to do.
Okay, coming up tomorrow afternoon, 17th-ranked BYU women's volleyball looks to extend its 26-match WCC home win streak against Portland in the Smithfield House, 3 Eastern on BYU TV.
And in the spirit of extreme accountability, Jarom, do we need to take at least partial blame for the 3-game BYU football losing streak?
I haven't missed a single tackle. I just want to point that out.
Did we do something?
My run fit is excellent.
This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by The BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
This is where we dominate. Our playground, place of business. This is our promised land, where we seek to find ourselves. And we're here to make sure the spaces our best prove themselves on appear how they should. Intermountain Healthcare, official medical provider for BYU Athletics.
Introducing the Truck for Adventure. The all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier doesn't compromise on power or comfort. This midsize truck was redesigned to incorporate the latest technology and designs for safety, comfort, and convenience. Plus, with up to 6,700 pounds of towing capacity and best-in-class horsepower, it's rugged enough for adventure and still safe enough to transport all your favorite people. Where's your new Frontier? You'll find it at Tim Dowling Nissan Southtown and South Jordan.
faith, and we know that there's nothing that God can't do.
Hey, Peyton, I'm your dad.
Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
He is Jarom Jordan. I am Spencer Linton. Great to have you with us from LaVell Edwards Stadium, live on a Friday game day. It's time to whip it. Cougar Whip Around presented by Marist, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
In an LA Times interview, Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff
Hi, George.
said, quote, eventually we'll catch those guys, end quote, in reference to the $70 million each Big Ten school beginning in their new media rights deal, to which Brett McMurphy tweeted, Big Ten's new media rights deal, about $70 million annually. George Kliavkoff said that. We're looking to be looking at expansion. Sources, Pac-12 adding Dallas Cowboys, New York Yankees, and Real Madrid. What?
Listen, I know that he wants to be ambitious, and it's great. He's got great vision. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
What? They're not going to catch the Big Ten? What is it? What?
Like, we're talking about
USC and UCLA?
UCLA, Ohio State, and Michigan. Okay,
Penn State and Michigan State.
The Pac-12 is not going to be on that level. It just never will be.
Only the SEC can rival that.
Exactly.
That's the only school that has a shot.
The only conference that has a shot at rivaling.
Conference.
Yes. No, it's never going to happen. Like, he's mad. He's in anger mode. Right? He's in denial. He's going through the stages of grief of losing USC and UCLA. He's in denial mode right now.
We're all playing for third. We being the other Power 5 schools, conferences.
Like, it's okay. The Pac-12 could still, like, recover and do great things and get a fantastic media rights deal, but this is just asinine. This is ridiculous.
Where is it, by the way? Where's that media rights deal again?
Great. I don't understand.
Still waiting.
Why? All right, on to happier things, Jarom.
Oh, I'm happy about that. Makes me laugh.
Aaron Livingston, it does make us laugh. Yeah, the Cowboys and the Yankees, they'll save you.
Real Madrid. Well, maybe FC Barcelona.
BYU women's volleyball got a huge win last night, and it was the way they played, led by Aaron Livingston with 22 kills. Abby Taylor taking over for the injured setter star Whitney Bauer. Huge shoes to fill. She was awesome last night. Who had the bigger performance in the win? Was it Aaron or Abby?
It's a good question. Abby was tremendous. BYU hit 416 last night. I'm going to go with Abby, even though Aaron's performance was unbelievable. And I told her as much after the match. It's because BYU had played a match without Whitney Bauer for the first time since 2018. It's been years. Abby Taylor stepped in, didn't skip a beat.
Fantastic. Well done,
awesome.
Abby. Can I say that the first set belongs to Aaron with her 10 kills, but as far as the overall match, the better performance for the entire match, hard to argue against Abby.
I've seen 10 kills in a set twice in my 16 years here. And one was last year. The other one was last year. Kristen Janke, Grand Canyon men's.
Yes. Yeah, Aaron won the first set. Abby takes the performance.
Takes the match, yeah. Lauren Gustin scored 25 points, 24 rebounds in that exhibition win against Westminster. Is Gustin the best basketball player on campus right now?
Who else is scoring 25 points and grabbing 24 rebounds?
It's about Barbara Walters. That's what that is. Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
A 20-20. Anyone under 35, under 30 does not get that.
Jarom, she's going to average this season probably 14 points and 14 rebounds. Like, that is not out of the question for Lauren Gustin. She could average 14 and 14. So until somebody else can rival that, then yeah, Lauren Gustin's probably the best, most proven basketball player on campus right now.
I think Lee Kamard might think he's the best.
We'll see who steps up for the BYU men's team. I mean, there's some guys that can just. Foose might be that. He's a double-double guy.
Foose might be that guy.
Right?
But I think Lauren is better at that than Foose is right now.
Yes, she is a double-double machine. She's literally on the preseason watch list as one of the best power forwards in the entire country. Like, when somebody for BYU men's basketball is on a list like that, okay, now we can have the conversation.
Like, if Yoli Childs was on the team, I think we'd be having a debate. You know what I mean?
Lauren is so special for this women's basketball team. 13th ranked BYU women's soccer hosting number 23 and conference leader Santa Clara tomorrow night at Southfield. What would a win tomorrow do for the BYU women's soccer team?
Keeps WCC title hopes alive, keeps hosting through the third round of the NCAA tournament alive. Basically, you've got to be a top 8 team at that point. Also, it continued the rivalry against Santa Clara, where You know, Santa Clara won the national championship 2 years ago and then got knocked out on its home field against BYU in PKs in the national semifinal. So that's about as big of a regular season match as we can have, Spence, tomorrow night.
Strangely, BYU can beat Santa Clara head-to-head tomorrow night and win out and not win the conference because
they've tied twice.
And they go by points. And because BYU has 2 ties and Santa Clara, if they win out and only have the 1 loss, then they would win by 1 point there. But it doesn't matter. So as long as BYU beats Santa Clara tomorrow night, I'm starting to care less and less about the conference championship. I'm more so focused on the RPI and BYU's national ranking, because right now BYU is slated as a 4 seed in the approaching NCAA tournament as the second best team, or second place team, I should say, in the West Coast Conference. Beat Santa Clara, you're going to have the best seed of any WCC team. Let's go. Let's go.
Not sure on that one.
You really?
Santa Clara could still have a higher seed with the loss.
Their RPI is 33, and they're 10 spots lower in the rankings.
It's about to get helped by a potential win against BYU.
But if BYU wins, what I'm saying is BYU beats Santa Clara, they'll have the best seed in the NCAA tournament out of the West Coast Conference.
Santa Clara still might be, well, they still might be a higher seed.
Ooh, I don't know.
We'll see. Jamal Williams said in an interview that he roller skates when he's stressed. How good of a stressed roller skater would you be during a BYU football game?
Not great.
Like, you're just going.
I'm not a good roller skater in general. I'm not a good rollerblader. My grade 2 MCL tear would signify that.
Yeah, you're playing hurt, man.
No, I could never roller skate during a BYU football game. Good grief. I'll stick to pacing the sidelines.
Yeah, I'll leave that to Jamal. I'm more of the weird person. I went with some friends like 2 or 3 years ago. We all went to, I think it was Classic, right? Just a bunch of 30-somethings just weaving in and out of teenagers. I was on a scooter.
Oh, you were riding
you can ride a little
scooter?
You can ride a little scooter there. I can't skate with crap, no.
Well, be careful for your shins with those scooters, man.
That's what I told all the kids. I said, look out.
Louisville women's basketball coach Jeff Waltz is not a joke. Had a slide installed in their practice facility.
Awesome.
So he and his staff could get from the second floor offices to the floor quicker.
It's amazing. Can we do that to Studio B?
Darren, my question for you is, how mad is Mark Pope that he didn't think of this first?
Probably ticked. Because I could see.
That's totally a Mark Pope thing.
That would be awesome. Who doesn't want to slide in their house? Jimmy Fallon has one in his house that his kids use.
I feel like a college football team of some prominence has a slide from the second. Is it Clemson? Yeah.
It's Clemson.
Yeah, that's right. So we've seen this before, but hey.
We've seen this before.
It's basketball, Louisville.
Yesterday at Sapporo, Moken tweeted at us, can we talk about the real elephant in the room regarding the BYU football slide? Speaking of slide. Didn't start until the new Studio B came online. Obviously, the Sports Nation karma is not what it was. So how much responsibility should we take for the 3-game losing streak?
Listen, sometimes it takes a little while to get used to new digs, new surroundings, new studio. Yeah, it'll come around, okay? Listen, I'm willing to, if this is what it takes for BYU football to play better, for us to say, hey, I'm sorry our new studio did not bring the karma effect like it used to, fine. Just win tonight, and I'll happily take the blame partially for BYU football not performing well since after the Baylor game when our studio went into play.
We're undefeated. I don't know what this is.
No, I don't care. Just if you win tonight, great. I'll happily shoulder part of that blame.
Yeah, no. The karma's convenient, okay? The karma's convenient. Join Gregor Bell, Riley Nelson, Jason Shepard, Mitchell Juergens. Fire up coverage of tonight's BYU East Carolina game, 6 Eastern on BYU Radio.
Up next, our game notes for East Carolina and BYU next. Things that you absolutely need to know to feel better about BYU's chances. This is BYU Sports Nation.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
BYU Food to Go's convenient location at 2191 North Canyon Road in Provo makes bringing popular BYU foods to your next event easy. Everything's ready when you need it at the drive and load pickup. You drive in and they load no matter the weather. And stop in the on-site creamery for great BYU chocolate milk and ice cream. BYU Food to Go, bringing campus to your table. Call for details, 801-422-5001.
If you're looking to build your brand awareness and increase market share as BYU moves into the Big 12, this is the place, BYU Athletics. We can provide the tools you need to make sure your company is seen and heard. BYU Athletics is where you can align your products and services with loyal fans that cheer for our Cougars. And they can also help your business win. Learn more about what a partnership with BYU Athletics and your company will look like. After all, this is the place. Email sponsorship at byu.edu today.
10 seasons going from never knowing to finding answers. Wondering how you belong to finding where you fit. 10 seasons of questioning what might have been to embracing a bright future.
I was able to put a big piece of my family together.
I was getting answers that I had been wondering about.
On Relative Race, new beginnings, new adventures, new connections. Stream a new season of Relative Race Season 10.
Watch me how I overcome what they said could not be done. I did it. Now sing it. Watch me how I overcome.
Welcome back to LaVelle Edwards Stadium on a game day. Happy Friday, everyone. This is BYU Sports Nation. I'm Spencer Linton. That is Jarom Jordan. Beautiful backdrop. It is cold, but it is beautiful.
It looks warm. It is not, okay?
It is time for our game notes. Things that you need to know to be the expert in your own BYU football circles. Jarom, start us off.
ECU got ballers.
Yep.
Quarterback Holton Ahlers, the ECU career leader in touchdown, pass, and yards. AAC leader in completions, by the way. Running back Keaton Mitchell, 9th nationally in yards per carry, already to 1,100 rush yards.
Should I be impressed? Because I am.
Wide receiver C.J. Johnson went to high school with Holton. And Isaiah Winstead, both top 10 in receiving yards. Well, one of them, Johnson, receiving touchdowns, Winstead receiving yards. These guys are good on offense, like very good.
Certainly, but you know what? They've enjoyed a lot of home cooking this season. ECU, of the 8 games they've played, Jarom, 6 have been at home this year. They have played 2 road games, one against USF, like BYU, common opponent. They scored 48 against USF. BYU scored 51. Maybe that goes into the 3-point line.
They have a
BYU tonight.
2.5-hour lightning delay?
Okay? Probably not. The other road game they played was against Tulane. They scored 9 points in that game. Huge point of emphasis for ECU's coaching staff this week is, can we take home energy with us on the road against a good team? They talked a lot about this. 9 points against Tulane. This makes me feel a little bit better about ECU being a little bit weird on the road tonight after their performance against Tulane.
Tulane, a top 25 team at 7-1. They're pretty good. Okay, number 2 for me. ECU isn't good at defending the pass. So Jaron Hall and the Cougs need to get after it. Bottom 20 worst in pass yards allowed and pass defensive efficiency. So calling out the Cougs receivers and tight ends to get it done tonight. And Jaron Hall.
How crazy is this? This goes into our conversation about BYU playing better at night. BYU as a team is surrendering 113 fewer rushing yards per game this season when the game was after 6 o'clock.
What is that? That's not a thing. Like, what? Well, it is a thing, clearly, but, like, why is that a thing?
Why? That's what I want to know.
Can't explain.
Why? 113 fewer rushing yards when the game's after 6?
Yeah, it's BYU's, the newest Batman movie, where it's just like, just at night, just BYU comes out at night. The Cougs showing up tonight.
Defense after dark, Jarom. Defense after dark. Let's go.
Hopefully. Speaking of, BYU's 23-1 since 2019 when kickoffs at 6 or later. That's the case tonight. 9-13 when it's earlier. So for some reason, BYU's just unbelievable. Like, BYU can hang with Georgia. I'm kidding. If it's after 6 o'clock, like, it feels like just BYU turns into this other, again, the Cougs.
Yes, it's Halloween weekend.
Yes,
Come on, Cougs.
Yes, it is.
BYU's trying to avoid a couple of dubious marks here. The last time BYU had a winless month was September of 2017, which was part of BYU's worst season in 50 years, 4-9. The last time BYU had a winless October was when Bronco Mendenhall took over the defense back in October of 2014. They lost against
You made
Boise
it sound
State.
like it was Broncos.
No. They lost. I'm just saying, similar
It was
situation.
so bad.
Similar
Yeah.
situation with Bronco taking over for Nick Howell, calling the plays. Kalani taking over for Elisa Tuiaki, calling the plays.
Yeah, Jaime Hill was like, yeah, that was bad in 2010.
In 2010, yeah, not
He's 1-4.
So let's avoid the winless month for the first time in 5 years. And the first winless October in 8 years.
Ugh.
Not great.
Any comp to 2017 means that's bad. Because 2017 is the worst. Hey, as we mentioned, huge game tomorrow in women's soccer. Number 13 BYU, number 23 Santa Clara. 8 Eastern time, WCC title on the line. If the Broncos win, they got the title locked up with 2 games to go. BYU still playing for that, and NCAA tournament seeding tomorrow night on BYU 2.
Up next, fantasy teams for the weekend. Should I bench Jaron to give you a shot?
Just to see if I have a chance. He's gonna get a 30 spot in this one.
Hey, we got a rise and shout out to Elite Parenting as well. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Find this guy.
Yep.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork offers a large inventory of Ford vehicles, including a selection of cars and trucks, providing a range of transportation choices. From the Ford Fusion sedan and the Edge crossover SUV to a range of pickups including the F-150. Each product line comes with options to enhance performance, comfort, and safety. Think Ford, think Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork.
Here's the thing about BYU Sports Nation. It's a banner that unites fans all over the world. BYU TV and BYU Radio are all about bringing your family events and games live. On air, online, and on the free apps. It's the next best thing to being there, connecting your fandom with others across BYU Sports Nation. Download the apps and get exclusive access to analysis and interviews with players and coaches. BYU TV and BYU Radio, the place for all things Cougar sports. Tune in, join in.
This is BYU football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they care.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey. Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
BYU Sports Nation is on demand from within the shadows of the everlasting hills. May peace be with you this day and always as you download the free BYU TV and BYU Radio apps and subscribe, rate, and review to the podcast.
Let's play BYU Sports Nation fantasy football on a Friday, shall we?
Why?
Because an unbeaten mark is on the line, Jarom. Can I run the table? Go perfect.
I want you to. I don't care about this anymore. I've given up. I'm tanking for Wembanyama.
Tanking for the number one pick
I'm
next
tanking
year?
for the number one. I've already got it.
Pick?
I've already got it. I don't need to do anything. Like, why should I even try now? Okay, my starters in a losing effort this week will be Zach Wilson taking on the Pats. Zach, can you throw a touchdown passing to? Ben Bywater. He's my only defensive player, so I must start him. And Chase Roberts is my receiver. No Cody Epps, no Chris Brooks. Those are two of my big targets there on offense. Those guys are out in this game.
If Zach Wilson has a big week, this might be your week.
Chase Bob better show up today. Come on, Chase.
My starters for week 9. Not surprising, going with the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, Jaron Hall to lead things off. If this is a shootout, it's over.
Seriously, if this is 7-3, I've got a chance.
Yes. Fred Warner gets the start, linebacker for the 49ers on my defensive side. And then, you know what? I'm going to start Jamal Williams. Like, typically I would go with Puka Nacua because Puka's going to have a big night. I just, for whatever reason, woke up feeling like Jamal's going to get into the end zone for the Lions this weekend.
You don't have to do jack squat with your second and third players. Like, the fact that Zach has not done a ton for me on offense, and Jaron's been really good this year. That disparity is the reason.
There was 1 week.
X and O, whatever it is.
Where you had an 8-point lead going into Monday Night Football.
Yep.
You had an 8-point lead, and I needed 9 tackles from Fred, and he gave me exactly 9. Like, because you had a decent week from Zach.
Never trust a Niner. That gave me at least
maybe
2
I should
touchdowns.
let you start 4 players next week.
Just to see. Just waited.
Yes.
Well, I'm also starting a BYU player on the a Cougar defender. That's not been ideal this year.
No.
BYU struggle, right? Which, by the way, want to get this stat out there. You know what BYU hasn't lost to this year? A G5. 3-0, Spence.
I like that
G5
stat.
ECU Cup. What about Liberty? They're an independent. How do you not know that? With Brigham Young. They're going to Conference USA. BYU's going to...
They're not technically Group of 5.
They are indeed.
Okay, I'll take it. Convenient stats to make us feel better.
Convenient stats to make us feel like BYU can win tonight. BYU a favorite.
3 points.
Which is wild. Yeah, let's get it done. Stop messing. Hey, BYU, stop dorking around. Let's get a win tonight, okay?
Let's go.
We have to talk about this every day. Are you thinking about people like us, okay? And yourselves, of course. No, everybody's stressed. Everyone wants a win. It's at home. It's on a Friday, which I love more than a Saturday. Like, yeah, let's go, man. Let's get this done.
It's trick or treat. We want the treat. No more tricks.
You know the most popular candy for Halloween?
Candy corn?
It's Snickers.
It's the most popular.
So perhaps BYU, why wait? You know, why wait? Why wait tonight to get a win? Like, get a win now.
Yes.
Sometimes you're not yourself. BYU has not been itself the last couple of weeks, and perhaps they eat Snickers in metaphorical form, and boom, turn into the Were-Cougs, and now they win.
Just give them
We've
Snickers.
figured it out. BYU's going to consume Snickers in the locker room, and boom goes the dynamite.
Yeah, no, they've been eating that awful candy corn for the past few weeks.
I think BYU had Snickers before the Baylor game, if I recall.
Oh, interesting.
That's not true.
Our question of the day, what candy does BYU need to eat tonight to beat East Carolina?
What random thing do you feel BYU needs to do to win?
Does it matter how BYU plays tonight if they just win the game?
Nah, dog.
Our Elite Voice today presented by PAX Healthcare Elevated. Nate Paskett on Twitter says, margin of victory is not important.
Correct.
But I want to see fire in the players' eyes.
How are you going to do that?
I want to see energy and fight. So, yes, the attitude of the play matters, but how they get the win does not. I like that take. I want to see the exact opposite of what I saw in the second half against Liberty last week, which was just broken.
Body language.
Broken.
That's what I think Nate is talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fully engaged. Like, hope. When the adversity hits, and it will, don't tuck tail and run and it's like, oh, here we go again.
BYU will trail in this game. They're going to have to respond. Yeah, absolutely.
Today's Rise and Shout Out presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics. Let's give it to our guy, John Beck.
He found his guy.
Yes. This is parenting excellence. He said, my 6-year-old is homesick from school. It's time for him to see the greatest moments in BYU football history.
You can watch that on YouTube. It's so good.
So great.
A rare hurricane watch for Provo, Utah.
It's one of the best productions I've ever seen in my life.
So good.
It's on my IMDb BYU Top 100.
Top 100?
Our thanks to today's guest, Roy Philpott.
Sorry to Dennis, we ran out of time.
For Jarom Jordan, I am Spencer Linton. Shout out to Gordon Hudson. We'll see you tonight. BYU Sports Station.
Come on, baby.
6 Eastern, 2-hour pregame show. Go Cougs.
Get
Beat
it.
the Pirates.
Get it done.